Everything you need to know about products and services that can improve your life. This is Experts on Call on CL 650.
And welcome back to Talk About Strata. So we're talking about major construction, and we're going through the cycle of everything we've dealt with. We've gone through the tendering process. We've talked about the negotiation of the contract process, the purpose of getting consultants, the importance of getting legal advice on contracts before you sign them. But a lot of strata corporations kind of get to the end of the project, and we kind of wind down, and we never really get it finished. There's always things lingering. There's deficiencies. There are things that people aren't happy about, and those are issues to deal with the contract. But let's start set with the situation. Something goes wrong in the contract. Something goes wrong in the process. How do we solve that dispute? Do we build something into the contract process for the dispute, or do we just let this devolve to the courts? What's our best method of dealing with this?
Yeah, that's a very good question, Tony. The first and best thing that you can do is ensure that you have a contract in writing. Too often, stratas get into business dealings with others, and they have either a verbal contract, or essentially what they've done is they've basically just signed a quote with no contract terms as to what's going to happen if things go wrong, and who's responsible for what areas of the contract itself. So getting it in writing is critical, but also ensuring that the written contract includes tools to deal with dispute resolution. Now, one of the things that you see very frequently in contracts is an arbitration clause. I'm personally, and other lawyers may disagree with me on it, I'm personally not a big fan of arbitration clauses. I like to say it's like going to court, except that you're paying the judge their hourly rate, right, which is typically $400 or $500 an hour. So it can get very expensive. Yeah. So I'm not a big fan of the arbitration route, but there are things that you can do to try to manage disputes either during construction or post-construction, hopefully while also keeping legal involvement to a minimum. Some of the things you can do, you can put in a clause that essentially appoints a third-party neutral to help to resolve disputes. We've even had it where if there was a dispute between the owner's contractor or consultant and somebody else, that a third party could step in and essentially cast a deciding vote. Right. That could be a good way to deal with it. You can have a mandatory mediation process involved as well too, so that would require parties to try to resolve their dispute amicably before going to court. So things like that are really going to be critical to try to keep it out of court and out of the arbitration process, because once you've gone down that route, your costs are going to be a lot higher than you were expecting.
Which everyone would like to avoid. The cost, the disruption, the delays, everything else that's involved with it.
And from a contractor perspective, that's not an attractive perspective, because our costs go up as well, and our risk goes up in that as well. So nobody likes that. I know for our painting projects, we typically have a third party appointed in our contract to deal with that. Typically, like a master painter institute approved to review it, or if there's an engineer on record, that's our preference there as well.
So some sort of mechanism.
Yeah, absolutely.
That will help to limit risk, but help you to resolve the difference as quickly as possible, so you can get on with the contract or the completion of the contract at the very least.
Yes, absolutely. I just wanted to add one thing, Tony. People often get into disputes during construction. Sometimes stratas just will ultimately pay extra money to get the job done and come to us afterwards. There's a lot to be said to get to the end of the contract before you get your dispute going, but it's important to also ensure that you're not prejudicing your rights. So if there's something that you're not uncomfortable or you're uncomfortable doing, but you feel you're going to do it just to get the job done, one thing we've always said to people is agree to it, but tell the other side you're doing it under protest, and you're not agreeing that it's something that you're required to do under the contract. That gives you the ability to pursue a claim later if you ultimately feel it's in your interest.
Well, then you want to get the contract done. Right?
Absolutely,
you want to get this project done. What about you, Dan? We're coming to the end of the project. The project's winding down. We're just about finished. We're starting to clean up the site. When is it finally over?
Yeah, and that's a great question. I mean, I think all the way along, even in the dispute resolution you were talking about, is that one of the ways that we've tried to deal with that within our company, and a good company should have an assigned project manager. that giving clear communication. You mentioned from the strata perspective that there's a key individual, right? Similarly from the contractor, there needs to be one individual that's on site that's regularly communicating. The clearer our communication is with the strata, the less disputes we typically have. But you get to the end of that project and you're right, there's still, well, who says when it's done? You know, and is there a formal, sometimes there's a formal notice of completion like there is on a new construction site. Those are excellent. That begins a certain time ticking towards our Lean Act and that kind of thing. Within our company, one of the most common ways we do that is to let the strata know that we're coming to the end of that, and we will then distribute to the owners notices of completion. We call them deficiency notices, or you know, that kind of thing, so that people have an opportunity to say, I've reviewed, as an owner in the strata, I've reviewed my area, right, my piece of the puzzle. And I've said, yep, that's good, or no, you know what, you missed a couple areas, or you broke something, or that kind of thing. And it allows us then, in a very amicable way, to deal with that and resolve those issues. And then we can all together say, yeah, you feel it's done, and we think it's done, good. Let's get to that final holdback and payment process too.
We're going to run out of time very soon, Sat, but can you explain quickly the purpose of the Builders Lien Act? Because everybody talks about holdbacks and they talk about the Builders Lien Act, and so just in a nutshell, what its purpose is.
Yeah, the primary purpose of the Builders Lien Act is to protect owners in the event that a subcontractor is not paid for some of the work they did. So if you go out and you hire a general contractor to do some work, and that general contractor doesn't pay the people that they hired, those parties are going to typically file a lien on your property. So the holdback money is money that you hold back for a period of, the rule is 55 days, to determine whether or not liens have been filed on the property. And if they haven't been filed, then you're able to distribute that money. If they have been filed, you're able to clear those liens off of title to your property on condition of paying that holdback money either to the contractors or into the courts. Right.
So it's subcontractors which could be providing services or products.
Exactly. Right? Exactly.
So your contractor you hired could be buying materials from a third party who he hasn't paid.
Exactly, and that's the big concern, because once a lien's on your on title to your property, it's going to be a big glaring red light for everybody who's comes along and wants to buy your strata lot or things of that sort. So it creates quite a sense of urgency if owners have those things on title and are trying to sell their property.
Well, thank you to you both. Dan, it's always great to have you on the show, and I know that your support and assistance for consumers has been outstanding. And Sat, certainly we appreciate you coming on the show, and we look forward to having you back in the future. Also like to thank QauyPacific Management in New Westminster, Remdale Painting and Restoration, CanStar Restorations, and CMW Insurance, who are our sponsors for the show and who make this possible and make this happen. I'm Tony Gioventu, your host of QauyPacific Talk About Strata on 650 Sea Isle.